So I hit him up and I'm like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then I get an email back from that journal and they said, okay, major revisions. And I was like, what? What are you saying? Like, it's already been accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there had been this major stuff up, and the editors had sent the manuscript, resent it accidentally to a new set of reviewers instead of looking at the revisions that I'd made.
What?
So, and this new set of reviewers had said, oh, no, it's a major revision paper.
Wow.
So that, like, I think really illustrates how subjective the process is.
Hi there, we're Dr. X.
Dr. Y.
And Dr. Z. And we're from PH Done, the channel where we talk about everything PhD and beyond.
So welcome to today's episode where we're talking about dealing with rejections.
I think rejection is such a regular part of academic life. Like, you may have been this straight A, first class honours, high achieving, pride of your family nerd till now, but, you know, every academic will be rejected, right? And not just once, but several times a year. So whether it's grants, papers, etc.
So do you guys have any tips for dealing with rejection?
I have a couple. But the first one is to expect it. So it might sound really depressing and probably a really maladaptive coping strategy. But when you lower your expectations, it's easier to deal with. Kind of makes it a pleasant surprise when it doesn't get rejected. So expect it is my tip. And it gets a lot easier.
So with me, I do remember when I was doing my PhD, submitting my first journal article, I had 5 reviewers. And it was a UK journal. I remember just being so scared at night because it'll be the UK time where they see my comments, see my revisions, and I'll get an email in the middle of the night. And that was my fear. Like, literally, I felt like I was having panic attack at night. I couldn't sleep.
What, because you were expecting comments to come through overnight?
Yeah, because I think my first round of comments come through in the middle of the night. And that was from the first 2 reviewers, and they said that they recommend for another 2. And then they had another one. So it's always in the middle of the night.
Well, obviously you've got your alerts set up so you're getting it in the middle of the time.
Yeah, but I was thinking about it the whole time. Like during the day I'll be thinking about it, thinking that, oh, maybe they don't like it or something, that they did it wrong. And it was just in my head the whole time. And it's just, so that was because it was my first journal article. So I was really scared of the process. And also, every time they reply, they CC all your supervisors.
Yeah. That's what I hate the most. When you get
public shaming.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. And I think, I don't know if you guys had it, with journals, they can be quite particular.
Of course.
When you submit the journal article, they'll be like, oh, you're missing this, you're missing that. Really administrative, small thing. And they'll be coming back to you saying, hey. And sometimes, even though you probably went through it 100 times, but you may miss one reference. It's reference 25 and you go straight to 27.
Yeah.
You miss that one number and they come back commenting on that. And it's just, if it's just between you and the journal, it's fine. But they CC all your supervisors.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Did you feel really emotionally attached to the paper? Were you really invested in it? Because it was your first?
Yeah, it was my first, and also I'm really scared of my supervisor.
Yeah, you don't want them to see if you've done a shitty job. It's typos and stuff. It makes it seem like you're incompetent, but it's
Yes.
I know at the beginning it feels like that.
So that was the time difference and the fact that it keep going back and forth, and I just couldn't sleep at night. That just had such a big impact on my mental health, and that was I think it was 4 months. I was in that state, worrying something gonna come back. UK time.
It's so intense. But 5 reviewers is a lot.
So usually for me, my reviewers' comments come back all at once, not one at a time. Yeah.
So what's it been? You got comments from one and then they suggested further review from other reviewers?
Yes, so I think for my first 2 reviewers, one's really like it and the other one doesn't really like it. And then they recommend for another 2 reviewers. And then again, put a grade on some of the stuff. So then they recommend the 3rd, 5th reviewer, the 3rd round. Yes.
Wow. Usually because it's hard to find people to review papers because it's essentially like free labor, which we'll probably get into at some point. So it's surprising that they went to the effort of finding that many people just for the one paper and that the
Yeah.
editor didn't just feel like they could make a decision.
I wonder.
Yeah.
I think I got that for my first paper as well. Maybe back in the day,
Oh, really?
people had more time. Now it's like no one wants to do it.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So did you feel the same way as like the sort of intense anxiety around getting the comments back?
I definitely did. Yeah, I was gonna touch on that a bit later, but yeah, because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. Or I was at the beginning. So it was I like triple check everything that I submit, and then you put it in, and then there's always gonna be stuff you forget, and then they'll come back and be like, oh, you were actually supposed to do this, and then you have to resubmit it again, and there's CC all your supervisors. I think at the beginning it was very, very nerve-wracking getting comments back, but also it's because I think my supervisors back in the day, my PhDs, they were very harsh or very picky at least.
Right.
So I find that then when it went through reviewers, it's like going through another round of really pickiness, and it's just like
Yeah.
it was like never ending. But I didn't get my comments throughout. Like I only got it as a bulk at the end. But I remember, the first one was a lot of comments and had to do pages and pages of revisions, which was really annoying.
I think my supervisor woke up my fear. I remember after I got the first rounds of comments, and I was like, okay, I'll address it like after because I work at another job.
Mm.
I said I'll address it like at night or something, and my supervisor was like, no, like I would strongly suggest you to do it now.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they shouldn't have to tell you
Yeah.
when to do with it.
Yeah, but I think it was just my supervisor's style. Like he fears that I'm not treating it as an important thing. So it's his way of saying that this is actually super important. You need to like prioritize your time for this.
But was it like minor comments, and it was just like, oh yeah, you can just do that now? If it was like pages and pages of comments, it's like just do that in your own time. Like, why would he make you do it now? It's so cruel.
Maybe you wanted it published really soon,
Yeah.
Maybe.
like so you could put it in your thesis or something.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I remember going to one of the meetings. It's one of the PhD students meetup meeting, and everyone seemed to have a strategy to manage the comments. And one girl, she had different timeline for different comments. So if it's supervisor, she'll leave 2 or 3 days to read them.
Mm.
And if it's a journal article, she often have like a 5 days time
Yeah.
frame. And each time she will only read one section.
Yeah.
She won't read the whole thing because you just get overwhelmed thinking about, the comments that she made about, the discussion and then also the results. And, it just that she couldn't get it. Like you can like get really stuck and emotional about different comments at different sections. So she does section by section. So I'm only gonna read introduction.
Mm.
Then I'm gonna move on. So yeah, I think she had a really like systematic way of managing that sort of emotional backlash from the comments and for different things. And clearly with supervisor, she's more comfortable, and with journal articles, she tends to give more time just for her to really sit it in.
Do you have any special tips on dealing with rejection?
Yeah, so now reflecting back on my the first journal article, I think there's a few sort of, as you said, I was quite attached to the article, like thinking it's your work and something that's about you. So the rejection makes everything a bit harder. So the fact that knowing is part of it and everyone's going through it. But I feel like even though it's easy to say, but you still have to just go through that process, initial process of feeling, okay, that sucks, I can feel it. But then the second time will get better and the third time will get up. Yeah, so I think just a process you have to get used to it, to be, criticized of something that's quite intimate to you. I feel like writing is quite intimate because it's your words, it's your thoughts, the thought process you had. So try to disconnect myself from that it took me just time to get used to it.
Do you think you're used to it now?
Yes, but I think because sometimes the critique is still on your thoughts. Like, how do you get from there to that? So when it's that type of comments, you still feel it. I still feel it,
Mm.
but it just said the before I may, dig into it, like, I was, how did I was so stupid. But then now I don't go into that sort of thinking pattern.
Mm.
You don't ruminate over it.
Yeah. But Dr. Zad, being a perfectionist, do you still feel this a sense of rejection when, it's really negative or just a rejection up straight?
Yeah, I'm definitely more used to it now than I used to be. So I remember the last time. So during my PhD, I feel like the most amount of times I was rejected from a journal was maybe twice. So after I started my postdoc, there was a paper that I wrote. It was rejected from 7 different journals.
Wow.
It's just like because they also CC all your co-authors, and I just felt so bad and so ashamed each time it came back. But actually, I used to really get pissed off with reviewers' comments because as being a perfectionist back in the day, like when I submitted, I thought it was perfect at the time, and so anytime someone tried to criticize me, I was just like I took it personally. I was really offended. But now, I think, especially with this 7 rejection one, like because after they rejected, they still came back with some comments, and I didn't want to make the changes. I'm like, you rejected me anyway, so why should I bother changing this? But then, like, because it kept getting bounced back, so I started making some of those changes, and it actually made the paper so much better. And then it got into a really high impact journal. And so the lesson here, I guess, is don't take it personally. The reviewers' comments will actually probably end up making it better. Yeah, you just have to get over that feeling like you failed. Like, have a list ready, because rejection is a normal part of academia. So if you go for like a really high impact journal to begin with, and just go down the list, because I think that's what most people do anyway. That's what my supervisor tells me, and she's been around for so long.
Yeah, so you kind of draw up a list of, okay, we'll aim for here. If not, here are some others. So you always kind of have a backup plan.
Yeah.
I think that's very much like my other point would have been to like not take it personally. Like rejection sounds like failure, but it isn't.
Yeah.
Like so often it's luck. It's based on, how much money is available in a grant scheme or how much space in a journal kind of things.
Yeah.
In the case of papers, I find it's really highly affected by which reviewer's desk it lands on, right? So, I mean, obviously, if you do a half-assed job and it's a shit paper, it's not going to get in. But in most cases, rejection from a paper or a grant it's not a reflection of you, and it's not a reflection of the particular project not being good enough. But I have a funny story about that, like, illustrates this point, right? So I completed this project recently that involved one study but 2 different participant groups. So I wrote a paper for each of the groups, and so I submitted one first that got, accepted, published in a journal, and then I submitted the other paper, which is essentially like a sister paper. I submitted it to the same journal, and they rejected it, saying it was too similar to the other paper. So that got rejected straight off the bat from the editor's table, which I find interesting because I don't understand why. I mean, that's just what the editor thought, and that's just a very subjective judgment. But this is where it gets interesting. I resubmitted the second paper to a different journal, and it gets accepted straight away, right? Pending minor revisions.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, cool. And I did the revisions and I submitted it. And a few months go by and I haven't heard back yet. So I hit him up and I'm like, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then I get an email back from that journal and they said, okay, major revisions. I was like, what? What are you saying? Like, it's already been accepted.
Yeah.
But so I looked at the comments, right, from the reviewers, and there was basically a new set of suggestions. So there had been this major stuff up, and the editors had sent the manuscript, resent it accidentally to a new set of reviewers instead of looking at the revisions that I'd made.
What?
So, and this new set of reviewers had said, oh, no, it's a major revision paper.
Wow.
So that, like, I think really illustrates how subjective the process is. Like, if it had gone to the second set of reviewers in the first place, then it would have been a major revision paper. Anyway, so I did write back and I was like, hey, you stuffed up, and they were like, yeah, sorry, we stuffed up, and they accepted it.
Ah, nice.
So it just kind of illustrates subjectivity, how lucky it is. Because the reviewers are people too.
Yeah. And sometimes I wonder, when do people feel comfortable to challenge the editor's decision? Say, for example, the editor may say, "Oh, this article is not, we don't really publish anything around this," but you're like, "No, I've actually seen paper on this topic before."
Right. Is it a thing? Can you actually challenge the editor's decision, or is it just saying stuff you? I don't agree. See ya.
No, but I think I challenged it
Oh,
for one of my articles, and it worked.
wow.
Yeah.
What? So what was it? What was the challenge?
I think that something like, I don't think the person really understand, the person who made that particular comment don't really understand. It's a different context, but I remember him saying that sometimes you still have to challenge a bit. But I wonder if you guys have ever experienced that, or for some rejection, you feel like you're comfortable enough to challenge to say that, hey, it's actually really, really different to the other paper. I think you should reconsider it.
So this was challenging a rejection from a reviewer?
Yes. For my case,
I don't think I've ever done that.
yeah.
I feel like every time it's a rejection, I'm just like, cool, lick my wounds, move on to the next one. I don't even bother looking very detailed at what they were unhappy about.
Yeah.
I think a mentor kind of to me said something similar. I guess she's been also in the field for a long time, and she says that if the reviewer says something wrong, you don't have to just take it lying down. You can actually just rebut it and say, this person is clearly wrong, or they haven't read it or something. But I'm like, I feel like at your early career stages, you don't feel like you have that kind of power. You just take it and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'll just go somewhere else then.
Thank you for your time. I was just gonna say, something we've already touched on, but share it. Like sharing rejections. Like when they say a burden shared is a burden halved, I think it's true. Like you might not be used to sharing negative experiences or putting your failures on show, but you'll find that it's like a common experience and it'll make you feel better. But also I think, especially even with us, right, we have developed this kind of weird sense of humor about it. Between ourselves, we'll just say, oh, this paper got rejected again. And we're like, nah, what else is new?
Yeah.
And do you think that, does it change you? Like when you're reading the rejection comments, do you come across really harsh rejection comments and you're like, oh, that's a bit harsh? And that when you respond to others, you tend to use a different way to.
I always make a mental note to not become reviewer two. So reviewer two, for those of you who don't know, is a way of referring to that dickhead reviewer that you'll always have one of, who's always kind of just tears apart your paper and says it's shit. But I think I found to a certain extent I become like that when I'm reviewing someone else's stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a vicious cycle because I've felt it and seen it every time. And I just feel like that's the norm. But definitely there are people that are really blunt and sometimes I feel like they have personal feelings. Because if you're in a specific field and they're trying to source reviewers for that topic, often it can be quite a small pool. And there's a chance that they know who you are or your supervisors are and they don't agree with the work that you're doing. So I have seen that happen where they really take some personally fueled kind of things.
Yeah, I've heard that too. As in that it's quite political in a really small field. And then that it's when you read who review your thing, okay, I knew what's going on here.
It's supposed to be anonymous.
So something I came across recently was a pay to publish journal that doesn't do blinding, which I find really it definitely causes bias, I think. So I was part of a paper with the really top dogs on the paper, and then wait for review, and I think people would recognize those names and just kind of don't want to offend them and just kind of accept them. So I feel like there's a bias. I definitely believe in double blinding because I think it just makes the whole process more fair.
Somehow I remembered with the paper that I published, I remember who the reviewers are, so clearly it wasn't.
Yeah, some of them they just tell you who the reviewers are.
Hmm.
But it's funny. It just reminds me of my PhD thesis.
Hmm.
So when I got my reviews back, I got some really harsh reviews. This one particular reviewer, right? Not even gonna like say, but so she's an absolute bitch about it, right?
Yeah.
And then I had to go through this painful process of trying to like attend to all the comments and stuff like that. And in one draft, she sent back. So you know, in like Microsoft Word or PDFs or whatever, if you turn on track changes,
Yeah.
it puts the person's name, like who you're logged into in that Office account. And so her name was on it. And so I found out who it was. And after that, honestly, I'm so scarred. Like, I see it because she's quite a prominent researcher in my field. But when I see her name online or on ResearchGate or whatever, I'm like, yeah, fuck you. Yeah. Blah, blah, blah.
I remember one of the colleagues of mine, he said that he's in a really small field and there's just two stands in that field. Like you either believe in this or that. So for his thesis, if the supervisor chose the person that in the same circumstance as him, you'll definitely get really high marks because it's quite strong for the people like that goes against each other. So he got like these awards because they all nominate him to be like, yeah, it's a very small field and it's just two binary stands in that field. And then, yeah, so that goes to show, even with that, that plays a role in who reviews your thing and who wants to reject your thing or promote your thing.
Yeah, I think I remember a similar story. I can't remember if it was one of you two or somebody else who told me it was like, because somebody published a paper or in their thesis they were talking about one of the theories and then one of the other professors didn't agree with that theory and so just like gave them really harsh marks just because of philosophical differences. They just didn't believe in that theory. So I think rejection really comes down to who you get as your reviewer who evaluates you.
And like we've experienced this as well, but in qualitative research,
I was
one
going
of
to say
those fields that not a lot of people are really that well versed in. And so when they see, some people are really picky about, okay, what was your philosophical, what's the word? Epistemology and your ontology, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And was it reflexive thematic analysis? Was it that kind of stuff? So again, it comes down to luck with reviewers and that how subjective a process it is.
Yeah.
At the risk, so we've talked about papers a lot, but I think the other thing where you get rejected a lot is grants, especially once you get into like the postdoc. For example, my team last year, we put together several grants, right? So there were 4, of which 2 I was involved in helping to submit it. And so each of these grants, they take months, right, of weekly meetings. You bring together essentially a curated team of like 20 researchers who are supposed to be all stars in their field. You write this groundbreaking proposal, collect CVs, write a budget, get quotes, blah, blah, blah. Go through internal review with other people in the faculty and with the research strategy office at the university, etc., etc. And then the grant goes in, right? And we got precisely 0 of the 4 grants we put in. Like, because at least in health and medical research, for example, for the large schemes in Australia, the funding rates can be as low as like 7%. So for every team like ours, there are 13 other ones, and only one of us gets it. Like, that's how difficult it is. When we don't get it, it's like, oh, shame. When's the next round? Like, it's a part of academic life.
Yeah, and I found that getting close to the timeline is it consumes so much of your time and work. You'll be like, oh, maybe we should bring that person on. Maybe we need, a NGO that supports us in that area. We need a support letter. Quick, contact someone. And you just get into this crazy mode.
And like a mini rant, the postdoc is always the one that gets like roped into doing the bulk of the work for grant writing. And the big dogs just get their name on it because they just have the track record.
Yeah, I had a recent conversation with my boss because she's going for a really big grant. And she was just like, Yeah, she reiterated everything we were saying. Like, she was just like, yeah, you have to expect it not to get funded. Rejection is a normal part.
Yeah.
She just like puts it in
Yeah.
and then forgets about it, and she doesn't want to think about it because otherwise you ruminate on it and you don't end up getting it. It's just a waste of time. You just have to
Yeah.
keep looking for the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the hardest part, right? Because it's
Yeah.
potentially such a waste of time.
Yeah.
So much time on it. But some years you're lucky and you hit the jackpot and you get several.
Yeah.
You do get better at it over time as well, I think. Your first grant is always going to be shit. Like your personal, like the one that you put in. But then over time, you'll learn what you actually need. Because I think, I remember,
It's an art.
yeah, I remember when I first put in mine, I thought it was pretty good. You think like the idea is good enough, but it's really not. It's like the team. They want to see like you have some big dogs on there with good track record. They want to see that you have someone with personal experience of whatever the thing is,
Yeah.
like consumers.
Mm.
And they want to see that you have a well thought out budget. They want to see that your methodology is all intact as well. It's just like these things you don't think about. Like I remember, when I first put it in ground, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a solid idea. This is a very gap in the field. People would totally want to fund this, and nobody gave a fuck.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, they're using like quite a detailed rubric.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's hard when you're in certain fields that aren't that mainstream.
Mm.
So if you're going, for example, for mental health, right? But like you work in a field that's very specific part of mental health, that's not like as mainstream and doesn't cover as much. It doesn't sound as impressive. Like you can't help it.
Yeah.
If you're just focusing on a very small population and things like that, it's hard to compete.
But they do say that though, right? In the fellowship applications, they're like, oh, it doesn't matter if this topic is more important than this other topic. They're supposed to weigh it equally. Yeah.
Yeah, they're supposed to, but it's hard.
Yeah, but I don't find like somehow because I don't know with grant rejection, I don't feel as strong as like a paper rejection.
It's not as personal.
Yeah.
That's true. I would say the thesis was the most personal.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess this touches a bit on the next topic, but I remember back when I first was submitting papers and for my thesis, when someone questioned my work, like a reviewer came back and said something, I always wanted to actually rebut. I wanted to be like, no, you're wrong. I have thoroughly thought about this issue and this is blah, blah, blah. And I remember my postdoc supervisor was like, don't do that. You have to be like, hey, thank you for this comment and we've made this like change or whatever to the thing. I think, just talking about, responding to reviewer comments and that. Yeah, at the beginning I didn't want to make any changes. But I think later on, you just have to I'm just making the bare minimum changes. I will always try to address it somehow. Like, even if they're completely wrong, you can just be like, oh, thank you for this comment. We have thought about this. We've added this one line to our limitation section or something. As long as you address it, usually that's good enough for a journal.
Yeah. I didn't know there's this trick that you can still just change a little bit or just add one sentence saying that, I'm like, because of that, so we're going to go into that. Like, you can actually bypass the whole thing of trying to change everything. Yeah, so I didn't know that strategy, but basically you just have to respond to every comment and then seemingly that you're agreeing with the comments. And I think that's reviewers will be happy enough to see that.
I've sort of found that when I'm a reviewer now. Because sometimes, okay, so I think about it from a human perspective, right? So they spent all this time going through one article, and this is something we'll touch on in a later episode, but they don't get paid for this. This is all on their own time. So they try to do this as quickly as they can. And then, so when it comes back, most of the times they don't even look at it. They'll just be like, oh, it looks like on the surface you've addressed this, that's fine, that's good enough for me, kind of thing. Or sometimes it doesn't even go back to reviews, just the editor, as long as they see you've addressed it, then it's good enough, kind of thing. Because I remember I used to agonize over it. And then, because I used to get tons of comments. Sometimes I still do. But yeah, I just like spend hours and hours on it. And sometimes it just, I didn't need to do that. I think, you just learn over time that no matter how good you are, you'll always get comments. Someone was always gonna.
Exactly.
I think my way of dealing with it, because I used to be a perfectionist, but I'm not anymore. Because I know I'm always gonna get comments, I just submit something that's good enough. It's not perfect because your definition of perfect is gonna be different from someone else's definition of perfect. So I just put in something that I'm like, this is like the bare bones or bare minimum of what's enough, and because I know they're gonna have things that they want me to change. And so that just like saves you time and saves you. You're also less attached because you spent less time on it, and you know it's not perfect. So yeah, it's my little tip of dealing with comments.
How about you, Dr. Y? Any tips on how to respond to reviewers or supervisors' comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dr. X talks about it before, but for me, I go robot mode. So I take the emotion out of it, and I constantly remind myself to take the emotion out of it. So, because criticism, right, no matter how constructive it is, it's never easy to take.
Yeah.
So I remember learning, guys probably learned in undergraduate psychology that humans can take like one negative interaction for 5 or 6 positive ones to keep maintain a state of peace or whatever. But like you're just opening a document that's full of criticisms and theories. It's not like your uni assignments. Like there's not going to be any. This is a good point. It's great work. Like it's like you just get a massive list basically of things that need to be changed. And the way people write can be really blunt and they so easily pull apart things that you've put a lot of time and effort in. And you're like, well, especially when they're like, oh, your sample size isn't enough or something like that. And you're like, well, I got no choice, bro. Like, it's already done now. Like, it's easy for them to say they weren't part of that agonizing research process. So it can be hard, really, not to have an emotional reaction to the comments when you're reading them. And just remember that they're not saying this is bad and worthless. Like, I always try to get myself into this state, like a good state, to respond to comments. So usually when I get the email and it pops up on my phone, I'll open it and I'll scan it just for the overall decision. And then I don't read the actual comments. Like I wait and I schedule a time to get into that response zone. And I also cut it up into little manageable pieces. So I'm like, okay, I'll just respond to 3 comments today and then tick that off my list. And then it feels much more manageable.
Yeah.
Like it sounds funny, but if I'm PMSing, I'm not gonna freaking deal with comments. I'm not gonna open it. That emotional roller coaster, I'm not ready for.
Yeah, I remember that was one of the tips that someone else gave. It's like when you are ready for reviewer comments, you gotta pour yourself a glass of wine first. Open the comment, scan them, and then close it. Drink your glass of wine, and then leave, and then come back to it tomorrow.
You need something to soften the blow. But definitely, it gets easier.
Yeah.
Once you've sat on both sides of the fence, like being
That's
a
true.
reviewer as well, you understand where people are coming from as well. So
I have a curious question. Have you ever, like, in terms of supervisor, not a journal article reviewer, like, you know the person, you think the person is going to be a soft, like, reviewer, and it turns out to be a really harsh one? Like, in person, the person is, like, super nice and gentle, and on the review comments is like, do this, like, this does not make sense.
Yeah, that was with my thesis, and also the person where we also continue to work with this person, but yeah, every time their comments just come out harsher than you think they're gonna come out.
yeah, have you, Dr. X? Is that why?
Yeah, because I would, like, one of my supervisor, she, when you see her in person, she will give you really harsh, like, comments, but when she reviews my thing, it's much softer and gives me choices. So she will say that perhaps consider this or that, or perhaps consider changing this part to this part. So it was really practical comments. So I really appreciate that. And it's also like using words just like perhaps it make me feel a little bit better. Whereas I have other supervisor that seems really nice in person, but come down to reviewing, it's just a style, right? Like, and they will be like, do not do this.
Just on that, I hate people who make comments that you don't know what to do with it. I always make the type of comments where I'm like, I think you've done this wrong or whatever. I think you should, and I'll give them the suggestion. I'll tell them exactly what I want. And because that's like constructive. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I don't like this or something, and then leave it at that. I hate those kind of commenters. I'm like, what do you want from me? Like,
my current supervisor is like that.
All right.
As in, like, so this is just like suggestions for, obviously, they're on your side before you submit the paper. And he'll just like highlight things. I'm like, well, what do you want? Like, Or he'll like literally highlight a word, and the comment will be a repetition of that word. Like if he wants, like for example, for you to say, he's questioning whether it's a trial or a study or a like that terminology, and he'll highlight the word trial, and you'll just write trial. Ooh, such a bad communicator.
So do you now understand what he wants?
No, I still always. But now I just don't bother questioning again. I just kind of like do what I think.
Yeah.
I assume he's asking me to do.
Yeah.
But that comes with time, right? With experience working with your specific supervisor for a few years, you get a hang of what it is they're trying to ask you for. So in that sense, it gets a bit easier.
On that note, if your supervisor, has been like a bit inconsistent, like if his or her thought changes all the time, and then he'll be making a comment, this time about this and change it to a completely different direction the next time.
Yeah.
Have you ever ignored the comments and just like slowly disappearing?
I regularly just delete comments that people have made because I know they'll forget that they'd made it.
I used to try and it depends who you're working with. I used to try and have the reply there, so if they needed it. But now I don't do that anymore. I just make the change and then I'll delete it and I hope they forget about it. So if I just do it that way, they won't notice if I haven't addressed the comment. But it depends on your supervisor. Some supervisors really like track changes and want to see specifically what you've changed. Some of them just want the next clean version.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we complain about like tricky comments and stuff, but I think it's actually harder with grant rejection. A lot of the time you don't get any feedback at all. Like after all that, you get a score on some like areas like that they were scoring, but they don't give you like qualitative feedback on what it is that they found wasn't good enough, and that's even harder. You just don't know how to make it better.
Yeah. And with smaller grants, sometimes you just get one sentence. It was really competitive this year. So, okay.
Yeah.
I think the only way to really deal with that is just to look at the ones that were successful, or ask the people to send them, and then you can just do a comparison and you can see which way your gaps are. That's the only other way, because they don't give you any feedback. So you don't really know.
You just kind
leave it up to you to figure it out.
Waste more time on them.
So how long have you sit on one paper? Like as in that you keep going back and forth with the person that just doesn't respond. What's the longest time frame that you have sit on a paper?
I feel like on average from submission to publication is about 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
I think the quickest has probably been like 4 or 5 months.
All right.
But definitely like 8 or 9 months. It seems to be like.
Is it the same average for you, Dr. Z?
I don't even remember. I don't like to provide behind this. I mean, I've had horror stories where, they go back and forth so many times with major revisions and then it gets rejected.
Yeah.
It's so, oh my god, I hope I don't wish that upon anyone.
Yeah.
What about you, X? What's your longest one?
Similar, I think 6. But at the beginning, I did not know that's the time frame. So I was getting really frustrated that people only respond to me. Yeah.
That same journal I talked about before with the non-blinding, they have set up this live review thing. So as soon as a review comes in, they have like a section on the website where you can, I think, respond to it, and also you see the comments, and it just, as each review comes in, it's just an iterative process. I think it's to make it faster.
Right.
So you have to wait for everyone to finish before you make changes.
So you can make changes as the second reviewer commenting on it.
Well, yeah, so you can start like writing your reply.
Wow.
It's like an interactive thing, supposedly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really good.
So yeah, just I guess going back to that point you made about being really surprised when it gets accepted. I think there's a lot of toxicity in academia, I would say, where it's just like people are just, I mean, yeah, you get used to rejection, but also sometimes people are just mean. There's no reason. Yeah. And then they just so like there was a paper that I was on, and the person because you know how the postdocs do all the work, and then this postdoc, she had done all the work and was about to submit it, and then like somebody sent in the last minute comment, and she basically didn't have time to address it, and then she just went ahead and submitted it. And after she submitted it, the person came back and was just really nasty about it. They were just like, I can see that none of my comments have been addressed here, and just like, I don't know, like, you know, why you've done this, blah, blah, blah. Like, and it's just like unnecessary, I feel. Like, you just, like, people know, like, everyone is time poor, and just, I feel like it's already been submitted. Like, what are you trying to get out of this?
Yeah.
And there's like so many stories about that. Like, there was, so many stories. So there was this, like, this sort of happened to me as well, but I wasn't a part of it. So I was organizing this big event, and I was sending out invitations for, you know, people to come and talk. And then someone behind my back, one of the like the higher people in this organization, she knows me, and she's like part of this team, and she's been consulted already. But she came back and directly talked to my supervisor and was like, "I don't think a postdoc should be sending out these invites. It looks very unprofessional."
Right.
Yeah. And it was just like, why? You know that my supervisor, they don't have time to organize events. It's just going to be me. Even if it comes from them, it'll be me writing the email. Like, why are you so offended? And why do you feel the need to, like, deliberately, like, call me out like this? I don't, yeah. My supervisor didn't care, though. She was just like, oh, just ignore her. She didn't even reply.
Oh, she didn't reply?
No, she didn't reply. She was just like, yeah, whatever. And then there was, like, there was this dude, I remember, from the ethics department, who I had a question about ethics, because I didn't know where this ethics was supposed to go, because in that university, sometimes ethics goes in different places depending on what department you're part from. I'm just kind of just asking in general where it should go, right? And then I think this person, who's I now know has left the university. He was just like, oh, if you submit it here, you need to do all this stuff. And I was kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if I need to submit it here. I just wanted to check. So that was my reply to him after he sent me the stuff. And he was like, it should have been covered by your supervisor, blah, blah, blah. How do you not already know this, blah, blah, blah. You're wasting everybody's time. Tell me your, like, supervisor details right now, and I'm going to come and make a complaint about you. And I was like, oh, gee. He was a yes, an absolute dick, but he was known for being a dick.
Yeah.
So, like, he's now left, and everybody was like, oh, good riddance. This asshole. Because he also, like, I think he's the head of the school into that email as well. It was just like, yeah, really... Yeah, it's just so, and it's not just, yeah, I have one last story. It's not just in academia as well, right? Well, I mean, not just in university.
Yeah.
So I know that, like, I don't know, sometimes people just feel like they have too much power. So, like, I know that I've tried to, you know how there's, like, forums, there's, like, ResearchGate, there's, like, Stats Exchange, if you have questions about stuff. So I've seen, like, it's very helpful for when you know, have techie issues or whatever. So there was once I asked a question on the forum, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. I realized that people were so mean.
They are.
I was just pretty much like, hey, I'm using this statistical method and I'm not sure if it's right. And this person came back to me. It was just like, excuse me, you're wasting everybody's time here. You didn't detail like what software you're using, what type of, like exactly what your variables are. I'm like, and it's just like, that was the only reply that was there. And I was just like, why? What is that? I'm obviously like a noob here. Like, why do you have to be like this? Just, I don't understand.
That's so true. But that's the thing. Do you think it's because they're just genuinely dickheads, or are they, you know, a victim of some vicious cycle where they've been treated like that in the past? Like, will we ever be that person? Or is it just a personality thing?
I feel like I try not to. I think that maybe it's a bit of a cycle, but maybe they're just they're probably, I don't know, I like to think the best of people. I'm like, maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe someone in their family died, or like someone ran over their dog and they're just not in a good place, you know? I still feel like it's not a great excuse. And I feel like, you know, one of the ways that could be combated is if, you know, your supervisor spoke up, maybe, and just like come and defend you, I guess, because I don't really see that a lot. So I get a lot of these kinds of emails, and no one ever comes to defend me. They might tell me afterwards, like, not to worry about it and that stuff. But I feel like the way to reduce it is if people actually spoke up a bit more and like, this behavior is not acceptable, you know, like, yeah. But I don't know. I'm hoping when I get to that stage, I'll be that kind of supervisor. But I don't know. Maybe there's politics around it that I'm not aware of, and explains why they don't do that. But yeah.
Yeah. Because on your that sort of ethics question, I was thinking, to what line? Because clearly it was a very unnecessary response to a situation, but to what line that it gets to be a certain level of abuse? I clearly don't need to CC the head of school in there.
How angry a person do you have to be
I know, right?
to feel the need to physically go and go out of your way to punish someone for something like that, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't even a disagreement. It was just saying, "Oh, okay, I'm not sure." You get so upset. Yeah, but I think that sort of power hierarchy. I think one thing that I found that when I first started my PhD is that because my PhD sits between health and other disciplines, and language is a thing is very important, say for social science and social policy. And that people get really sort of quite like you can't say that word, or you can, in this context you really can't say it. I sort of understand, but there's also I can see how if you ask the wrong question, people straight away get really irritated. But I also think if you're a new person, you just don't know the history of the languages. It's just feel like public shaming.
Yeah. I know, right? I feel like sometimes they'll reply all with a negative comment, and I feel like if it's like that, maybe you could just reply to the person individually, just be like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know about this."
Yes.
I think
A lack of emotional intelligence.
I don't know, or is it just academia? Because I see it on Twitter as well. Some of the comments
I'm
are
sure
just
people are nasty everywhere. But I guess academics in general can be quite time poor.
Yeah, and I feel like academia sometimes is sort of like using the smart language to make you feel stupid, which is a different. You add organizational Twitter, people can just talk shit to each other. But in academia, it's passive aggressiveness.
Yeah.
You understand the meaning, and then it's not obvious that they're shaming you, but clearly they're shaming you.
I think just bring it back. I think that's what really surprises me when I get some nice comments or someone's just really nice to me. I got a recent comments on a paper from a co-author that's really high up, and I was expecting him to be really, really harsh, but he was actually just so nice about it.
Yeah.
He was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna give you these bunch of comments for I think reviewers might say, but you don't have to address any of them. They're just if you don't think they're important, you can just delete them." And I was like, "Oh my god, that's wonderful!" And no one ever says that to me.
Yeah, because normally you get you get a good sentence saying that. Oh, great effort.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Substantial change needs to be made on that.
Us aspire to be such people.
Yeah. I hope other people like that and don't end up old and bitter
Yeah.
Uh,
at the ripe age of 40.
Even just that one sentence, right? It doesn't have to be anything special.
Yeah.
You can just reply that one same sentence to everything that you review. It just makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Shall we?
Wrap
Are
up?
we wrapping up this? Yeah. Okay.
So if you enjoy the video, please do remember to like the channel and subscribe to our channel. PH done.
Yeah. And if you have any tips on dealing with rejection or dealing with unhelpful comments, we'd like to hear. So comment down below.
Oh yes.
Okay.